The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
To my good friend and the next Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're 2 days away from Christmas. The Christmas season is the season of giving. But in Congress, it appears the season of giving will line the pockets of Democrats' special interests and stick the hardworking Americans with the tab. That's what this omnibus does. But as I listen to this debate, Mr. Speaker, I listen to the other side. My friend says, no, it's the Democrats who have put people before politics. They're so giving that they're putting the people before politics. What does that mean? What is the definition when you are so caring and you care so deeply about the people that you put them first before any politics? Well, let's look, because that's what they say this omnibus does for them. Well, first, guess how many pages? Over 4,000 of pet projects, pork, and progressive priorities. Guess how much it costs? They'll say, oh, about $1.7 trillion. But if you really add it all up and you add the PAYGO and the other things that they've done before, we're talking more than $2 trillion, because the people need to borrow more of that. That's really looking out for them. Guess who wrote it? Well, 2 retiring senators who face no accountability from the voters again. Now, they probably really cared about the people. They cared so much about the people that Senator Leahy gets numerous projects named after himself, because the people wanted that. You know who requested that? Just one person, so you don't have to use plural. No people, just Leahy. Oh, Shelby gets something named after him too. Oh, Speaker Pelosi. She gets a couple things named after her, because the people are more important than the politics, because that's what the people of America want right now. Guess when it was made public so the people would know how hard the Democrats worked for them? Well, it was in the dead of night at 2 a.m. on Tuesday before Christmas. The Democrats care so much about the people that they're home with the people and not here to read the bill or even vote on it. I'm not sure you don't put a medal in here for the people who don't show up for work, because they care so much. This is a monstrosity that is one of the most shameful acts I've ever seen in this body. The appropriations process has failed the American public, and there's no greater example of the nail in the coffin of the greatest failure of a one-party rule of the House, the Senate, and the presidency of this bill here. You controlled it all. Mr. Speaker, I just heard him brag about how great the Rules Committee is. They're so great because they care about the people. They care so much about the people, they never did their work. The Senate didn't pass one appropriation bill. Not one, so that people could read it or have debate. They passed a continuing resolution for the people so government wouldn't shut down. What date did they pick? Well, let's pick it right before Christmas, so members won't be here. They won't read the bill. They'll vote by proxy. They care so much about the people, they created a system to control the floor, where they have all the votes in their back pocket, so the people have no say. The country is tired of it. Mr. Speaker, I know you're busy reading, but I do know this for true. The country is tired of it. You know why? Because they told you last month. They told you last month that no, you don't put people before politics. You have done nothing but put politics before the people of America. So you know what? They fired you. They fired you. They chose a new direction for our country by electing a House Republican majority for the 118th Congress. If you dearly cared about the people, why wouldn't you let everybody read it? Why wouldn't you let them debate it? Why wouldn't you simply wait 11 days? Just wait 11 days. The people have spoken. They don't like that you didn't do your job. They didn't like that you put yourselves before them. They didn't like that you wouldn't show up for work. So you stuck it to them one more time. But you did it in a manner that is so big we've never seen it before. 11 days, this current debate isn't just about bad policy. It's a slap in the face to every American that voted. Which raises the question, what exactly are we voting on? I'll guarantee you not a single member that will vote yes can tell you everything that is in it because no one has had the time to read it. Maybe my good friend on the Rules Committee, Mr. Speaker, he might be at the groundbreaking for Elizabeth Warren's new $3 million swimming pool in Massachusetts, because that's what America needs to borrow money on right now, because that's putting people before politics. I don't know if you're going to go to the Leahy Center that he requested. It never went before the committee. It never went before the people. But you know best, Mr. Speaker. You knew the people really wanted it, even didn't they request it? Because Leahy requested it, and he'll never have to stand before the people again. Here are some of the worst parts of the omnibus. First, to state the obvious, the omnibus spends too much, increasing the deficit and fueling even more inflation. Now, the Democrats have been fired. They had 4 years. Let's just look at recent history. When Republicans had the majority in the House for 8 years, and you look at discretionary spending from the day we got the gavel to the day we had to hand it back, you know how much it increased? Zero. You've had it for 4 years before you got fired again. You know how much you increased? Discretionary spending? 1/3. Over $440 billion. You want to know why we have inflation, the highest it's been in 41 years? You won the majority, and you wasted it, and you spent too much, and you harmed the American public. The worst thing any government could do to its public is bring inflation. And that's exactly what you're continuing. This bill increases the baseline spending by $134 billion. Let me put it another way. The American hardworking taxpayer, you just added $1.5 trillion over 10 years to the national debt when we're already drowning in $31 trillion in debt. I don't remember the people requesting that, but in your definition, that's what you did. And what kind of projects are such high priorities? Do we have to increase spending by so much? Well, some left-wing pet projects. Let's look for example of what the people really requested here. For example, there's $2.35 million for the Leahy Center in Vermont, named after Senator Patrick Leahy. Well, who requested it? Well, Patrick Leahy did. Who wrote the bill? Patrick Leahy. Meanwhile, Chairwoman Deloria bragged that the omnibus fulfills 98% of the Democratic members' requests in the House. That's $5.4 billion for 3,213 Democratic projects. Mr. Speaker, I'm not quite sure your definition of people. I guess it's those members that you're really looking after. That would be politics. Our economy is already in a dire condition, and passing this omnibus only supercharges that disaster. You know what? Inflation is higher today than it was 11 months ago when President Biden said it had peaked. Families are paying $400 more per month than they did a year ago. Why? Because you put them before your politics, as you say. They just didn't know that they really wanted to pay more. Last month, our deficit was nearly $250 billion. Another record you own, a record for the highest for the month of November. It was fueled by 55% increase in our interest payments. Why? Because you own the majority, the House, the Senate, and the presidency. That's what you brought the American public. Meanwhile, personal credit card debt exploded by almost $400 billion in the third quarter. That's another record you own for the third quarter. Inflation is the economy's #1 problem. The Federal Reserve continues to raise the rate. Why? Because you took the majority. It's raising rates, and you still don't get it. But Democrats want this bill to put more pressure on the working family, because you know better than the working family, apparently. Americans have had enough. That's why, again, millions voted to fire the Democrats on this one-party rule. Mr. Speaker, second, the omnibus spending bill intensifies the crisis at the southern border. Now, I know, Mr. Speaker, maybe the Rules Chair will say, they're all putting the people before politics. That's why the President says there's more important things to do to even visit the border. He hasn't had much time in his 40 years of elected office to have a chance to visit the border. Since taking office and having one-party rule, the Democrats and Biden's open border policy has caused the worst border crisis in American history. You could try to ignore it, but in 11 more days, since you won't show up for work here, you no longer will have that opportunity. And we're going to take our work to the border. We're going to have our hearings on the border. All you'll have to do is open your eyes, and you'll see what you created. And you'll see the disaster that has become of your legacy. On this administration's watch, record numbers of illegal border crossing, deadly drugs, and even terrorist suspects have come into our country. I remember almost 2 years ago on a tour of the border, speaking to the border agents. You'll learn a lot if you're willing to do that. They told me never before have they seen so many people coming across the border that they catch on the terrorist watch list. I went to a press conference after, told the American public what we had learned. I would assume everybody, especially Mr. Speaker, when the Rules Chair says he cares so much about the people, that they'd be concerned because he knew what has happened when terrorists have come to America before. That they would want to rally together to protect America. No, Mr. Speaker, Congressman Gallego called me a liar. He said he has as much clearance as I did, Mr. Speaker, that this could not be true. But lo and behold, even the DHS came out and said, he tried to deny the facts, but now we know it's a record-setting number. How many people on the terrorist watch list coming into this country is too much for you? How many? How many before they act again? But if you don't want to do that, we now have caught enough fentanyl in the last year to kill every single American. It's in every single one of your cities. If you listen to the people and you stop playing politics, they'll tell you to stop it. There's enough now to kill 10 times over every single American. My good friend Guy Reschenthaler on the Rules Committee just recently told you. Today, well, as many of you sit home and let somebody have cast your vote, 300 Americans will be poisoned and die from fentanyl, from your lack of action. And what does this do to stop it? Nothing. What does it do to help manage the crisis at the border? Well, this bill provides more for migrant shelter services and reduces the number of ICE detention beds. These facilities that eventually release even more migrants across the country. Meanwhile, this disastrous bill reduces funding for border technology that would prevent more illegal border crossings in the first place. This bill funds, and you should brag about this, 300 additional Border Patrol agents. But as you brag about that, There will be 3,000 illegal border crossings in one single day just in El Paso. You can go over one overpass in El Paso, and in 7 weeks, 70,000 people came to that one location. But I know you care about the people on the border because you say so. It's just not the border of America. Because in this bill that you say you put people before politics, you put $410 million for border security in Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt, Tunisia, and Oman. You will fund walls and technology to protect the Middle East, but not to protect America. And what's worse, you brag about it. And when the American public asks you about it, you tell them to shut up. You know best. You're putting their issues first. And you're too busy to go to the border to see what's happening. So I want you to look in the eye of a parent when they come to you and tell you their child just died from a fentanyl overdose. Not because they purchased fentanyl, but they purchased a Xanax or something else. But it's so rampant, it's laced in everything we see. But sure, try to explain to them how you put them before politics when you pass this bill. This omnibus will continue to fully fund the IRS, including the 87,000 new agents, and do nothing to protect you, the family, or your business from being targeted by the government. But don't fear, Mr. Speaker. You told the public that you put them before politics. Remember earlier this year, the Democrats funded 87,000 new IRS agents and proved $85 billion to spy on Americans, spending $600 or more. So you go Christmas shopping this year and you spend $600, don't fear, the Democrats looked after you. They've got an agent following your every need. But you can trust them. You can trust them. Just listen to what we recently found on the Twitter files. The collusion between big tech and the FBI and the intel community. Oh, you can trust the intel community. Remember those 51 individuals, Mr. Speaker? The Haydens, the Brennans. They told the American public, don't play politics. All of this stuff is just Russian false. I want to tell you that 2 weeks before an election, because you can trust me. Well, now we find the truth. It's clear that instead of focusing on actual threats to our country and the people, they colluded with the private companies by the way of personnel and direct payments. So is there any money in here for the FBI to pay Twitter to go after Americans? Because you know best of what they want. You wouldn't want to do that with politics. Why does the FBI want to go after them? Because they want to go after free speech, because they may be talking about politics. Those people must not know that they're putting people before politics too. They're taking care of those people. Shut them down. Not only is it wrong, it's illegal. It is time Congress conducts real oversight and accountability in 11 days. I promise you this, House Republicans will begin that on the very first day. But this bill will give Biden administration a free pass. This bill provides the FBI with $375 million for a new headquarters and over $11 billion in funding. I guess this Congress of Democrat majority right now doesn't care if the FBI spied on you, if the FBI went after you simply because you wanted free speech. I guess they believe in that. I guess that's what you mean by putting people before politics. Don't listen to the people, because if they talk about something other than your politics and what you agree, you should shut them down. Fund something that does that. And oh, probably the secret of all the Democrats' power before they were fired was the wokeism. Buried in the omnibus is even more money for wokeism in the government and the military. The woke left wants to further divide Americans against each other based upon race, sex, and background. They want to teach our kids that America is inherently bad and that you should distrust and hate your fellow Americans instead of strive to be a more perfect union. As we look to the threats around the world, the rise of China, the threat from Africa to Asia, you brag about what you did for the Pentagon. So where did you put the money? Well, $8.6 million for gender advisor programs at the Pentagon. That's going to strengthen our ability to protect America. $200 million for gender equity fund. Oh, but you want to make sure it works everywhere. Gender programs in Pakistan. Not sure how many Americans requested that. But then again, you were looking out for the people. $575 million for family planning in areas where population growth threatens biodiversity. $4 million for shared equity housing models. These type of woke handouts should not be funded by taxpayers. They go against everything we stand for as Americans. Most Americans share Dr. Martin Luther King's belief that the content of character matters more than the color of your skin. For all the reasons I've laid out, at the very end, this will cost you more than $2 trillion. More than 4,000 pages is a train wreck. It's jam-packed with wokeism, Washington special interest, and wasteful spending that means more crushing debt to 330 million Americans and generations to come. It will make the border worse. It'll make inflation worse. It'll make the economy worse. It will make government worse. The American people are probably asking themselves, how did we get into this mess? I'll tell you how. Democrats failed to do their job. Mr. Speaker, if someone wants to challenge me on that, why did the American public fire you just a few months ago? Why did you wait to pass this bill if it was so great till after the election? Why did you allow the Senate, 2 senators to write it that can't be held accountable, that name things after themselves? Why did you pass the CR to push it against Christmas with a storm before our very eyes? Why is the majority of Democrats not even here if you think it's so good? If this is your legacy, I feel sad for you. But more importantly, the damage you've done to America. During the last year, Democrats controlled the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And they yet to fill their most basic task. Senate Democrats passed 0 appropriation bills out of their committee. They passed 0 appropriation bills off the floor. Mr. Speaker, they didn't do a damn thing. They went 0 for 12. Instead of following the law and funding the government by September 30th, they did what they do best. They created a crisis. They didn't even let it go to waste. We all remember what Speaker Pelosi told us about Obamacare. You have to pass it to find out what's in it. That's exactly the same. They waited until the last minute in a lame duck Congress to dump more than 4,000 pages with $2 trillion into the laps of the American public. Do you have time to read the bill? No. Do you have time to debate the bill? No. Do we mark up the bill? No. The members of Congress here to vote on it? Nope. It's all right. We got your votes in the back pocket. I don't know where the American people asked for that. In 11 days, this all changes. We are going to reclaim this body's integrity in service to the American people after this institution covers itself in disgrace one last time under Democrat one-party rule. A new direction is coming. 11 days, Republicans will deliver. I request a no vote on the omnibus, and I yield back.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.